In a controversial announcement, President Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Kenya says the swearing in of Raila Odinga would be seen as treason. And Time Magazine's surprising choice for Person of the Year. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCordy. This is Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a controversial move strongly opposed by the Palestinians and Arab states. Despite the announcement, the actual physical move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv is years away. VOA White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman reports.
Despite concerns that the decision could inflame the Middle East, President Trump Wednesday made good on one of his campaign promises.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
The U.S. Congress in 1995 mandated moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, but presidents since then repeatedly signed six-month waivers.
We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past. Old challenges demand new approaches.
Trump added that his decision is in the best interest of the United States and for the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Israel's prime minister expressed gratitude.
I call on all countries that seek peace to join the United States in recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and to move their embassies here.
But Palestinian leaders accuse Trump of destroying any possibility of a two-state solution.
This step is prejudging, dictating, closing doors for negotiations, and I think President Trump tonight disqualified the United States of America to play any role in any peace process.
The U.S. president, in his remarks, did note his announcement would cause disagreement and dissent. That quickly proved accurate.
No one has the right to play with the fate of billions of people for the sake of one's personal ambition. This only plays into the hands of terrorist organizations.
I address a heartfelt appeal so that everybody commits to respecting Jerusalem's status quo in compliance with the relevant United Nations resolutions.
Despite the uproar caused by the president's announcement, there will be no immediate relocation of the embassy from Tel Aviv. Administration officials say selecting a site that meets security requirements and the physical construction will take years. Steve Herman, VOA News, at the White House.
President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has met with criticism in the Arab world as well as in Europe and elsewhere. VOA's Laritza Hoke has more.
As expected, Palestinians and their supporters worldwide have reacted angrily to the U.S. president's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
He is appeasing religious extremism here and abroad, and he has dealt a death blow to the prospects of peace in the region.
There are concerns that Trump's move undermines a two-state solution for the Middle East. The UN Secretary General said the status of Jerusalem should be resolved through direct negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and reiterated that any unilateral move could undermine the peace efforts.
I will do everything in my power to support the Israeli and Palestinian leaders to return to meaningful negotiations.
The chief Palestinian negotiator said Trump's move disqualifies the United States as a player in the Middle East peace process.
He is in total violation of international law, human rights, and he's turning the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis from a political one into a religious one.
Some analysts agree that Trump's decision signals an end of the American-led peace process.
The Palestinian public wouldn't allow it. So any Palestinian leader who tries to, I think, would be thoroughly discredited in the eyes of his people. I do think that it is the end of an American-led peace process.
The head of an Orthodox Jewish advocacy group in Washington told VOA that recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital will help revive the peace process.
The announcement by President Trump today and the start of the process towards relocating the embassy sends a very important message to the Palestinians and the others, which is if you stay on the sidelines, things are not going to stay status quo. You're actually going to lose ground. So that it's really in your interest to find ways to, first of all, stop things that are undermining of a potential peace process.
A 1995 U.S. law envisions a relocation of the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But so far, all presidents before Trump have signed waivers to postpone the move amid security concerns. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Kenya's Attorney General Githu Muigai said on Thursday that any attempt to hold a parallel swearing-in of a president would amount to treason. Muigai did not name anyone, but opposition leader Raila Odinga said last month he would be inaugurated by People's Assembly on December the 12th, Kenya's Independence Day. Muigai warned the opposition of dire consequences if it proceeds with the plan, which he said will be a contravention of the Constitution and will be considered high treason. Now, under Kenyan law, treason is punishable by death.
The Constitution of Kenya provides in clear terms, in Article 2, Sub-Article 2, that no person may claim or exercise state authority except as authorized under the Constitution. No person may claim or exercise state authority except as authorized by the Constitution. A swearing in of any person not lawfully declared to have won an election by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and a swearing in that is not conducted by the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya is a process wholly unanticipated by the Constitution and is null and void and illegal ab initio. I hope I have made that absolutely clear. Further, and in addition, the criminal law of the Republic of Kenya in Article 40 of the Penal Code provides or stipulates that that sort of process is high treason. It is high treason in respect of the person so involved and any other person facilitating that process.
Now, for some perspectives on the political developments in Kenya, Professor David Monda, political scientist at the City University of New York, joins me live from our New York studio. Welcome, Professor Monda.
Thank you for having me.
Now, here we hear the Attorney General using the terrifying T word, treason. And the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, says he is going to be inaugurated on the 12th. What do you make of this? Where is the country headed?
So I think, Vincent, it's a classic example of Kenyan brinkmanship in our politics. We really seem to have two parties, the Jubilee Coalition and the NASA Coalition, which tend to try to outdo each other. Specifically in terms of the Attorney General's statement, ultimately it will really depend on exactly what oath of office Raila Odinga is allowed to perform, because let's also not forget that the police are ready to disrupt any moves that he should have to swear himself into office. Odinga, on his part, emphasizes the constitutional freedoms to declare himself the people's president. Now, whether that's considered to be treasonable or not is up to interpretation.
Now, Professor Monda, the opposition, Raila Odinga, says they have formed what is called the People's Assembly, and some counties have actually signed on to this concept of a People's Assembly. Constitutionally, is that something that can fly? And can that really then gave justification to Raila's inauguration?
So I think constitutionally it cannot fly. And, in terms of the NASA legal analysts, I'm sure they understand that any swearing in of Raila Odinga will be null and void. Now, whether it's treasonable or not will be a separate question. But specifically in terms of the political dynamic, this is more of a political brinkmanship, a political game than it is a legal one. In other words, the opposition, which really feels it lost the election unfairly and has a lot, almost half of the country that's very disgruntled and is upset, is trying to find a way to placate their supporters to also feel that they have a one-up on the current administration, on the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. And then on the part of the government, they're really trying to reinforce the fact that Uhuru Kenyatta was legally sworn in and he is the duly constitutionally elected president of Kenya. So a lot of this is semantics. It dwells more on the politics of the issues of the day more than it does on the legality, because constitutionally, any swearing in of Raila Odinga as president at this point is null and void.
I was in Kenya until November, and most of the citizens I spoke to were hoping that these two leaders will kind of find a way of sitting down and discussing some of the issues that are pertinent to their lives. Do you see this process, whatever is going on right now, leading to that, to a conversation that is meaningful to the citizens of Kenya?
I really think it will depend on moderates on both sides of the political divide, in terms of the Jubilee side and in terms of the NASA side. I do know from a range of sources that there's a wide range of diplomatic moves that have been going on behind the scenes to try and bring these two parties together. But aside from that, it really seems the hardliners in both the Jubilee and NASA side of this political spectacle have really hardened their positions. In terms of NASA, they're emphasizing they want another election in 90 days. And on the side of the Jubilee administration, they say it's a fait accompli. Uhuru Kenyatta is duly elected and the country needs to move on. So trying to find some middle ground in between these two positions will really be the question for the day going forward.
We will be watching very closely, and we know Mr. Raila Odinga has actually dismissed a call by the U.S. To kind of operate within the law.
Yes.
But we'll pursue that as we watch things unfold in Kenya. Professor Monda, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And now Professor Monda, who is a political scientist at the City University of New York, all the way to West Africa now. Over 400 Nigerian migrants have been flown back home from Libya, where they had been in various detention camps for months after attempting to enter Europe. The European Union is currently funding the process with the International Organization for Migration coordinating it. And the Nigerian government says more migrants will be returning in the coming weeks. Among the returnees were women and children, some of whom were seriously ill. When they arrived, the returnees were served food and were also given medical treatment. The majority of the migrants had left Nigeria by road, hoping to make it to Europe through Libya. However, due to various complications, they were all stuck in Libya, some for years.
And they took us from one prison to another prison to another prison. They used us for business in Libya. They killed some people, they sell some people, they beat some people. Even the deportation camp where I am, if we want to eat, they use skin to beat us out. Finish eating, they use skin to beat us in. They force us to sleep. They give us salty water to drink from the Mediterranean Sea.
I don't talk for As for me, until I die, I will never set foot in Libya again. And my own children will never try it. If I can't afford to send any of my children to Europe the legal and regular way, then I'll forget about the idea.
Well, the returnees were taken to hotels in town from which their various state governments would later come to pick them up and take them to their homes. More than 5,000 Nigerian migrants have so far been repatriated from Libya this year, all funded by the European Union. Now, the Nigerian government is expected to take over and continue the process. To East Africa, after 2 years in office, Tanzanian President John Magufuli has brought many changes to his country, including economic development and a low tolerance for corruption. But critics say the president acts like a dictator and is undermining democracy. Mohamed Yusuf files this report from Dar es Salaam.
President John Magufuli has been criticized for being arrogant and autocratic when dealing with opponents, either perceived or real.
Corruption is a cancer, it's a disease. And if at all you are there to fight the disease, you must fight it seriously. If you go it slowly, you can't fight that disease.
When he was Minister of Works, Magufuli earned his nickname, the bulldozer, for the way he pushed aside any obstacle in his way. As president, he often takes a similar approach. This April, he fired 9,000 government workers for having fake education certificates. His methods can get results. For instance, the government is building a railway, roads and pipelines to connect the country to neighboring Uganda. But critics say since Magufuli took office, freedom of expression and political space for the opposition have been shrinking. This opposition lawmaker dislikes Magufuli's leadership style.
We have a president who hates multi-party democracy. He might be developmental. He would like to see the country going forward, but he hates democracy. And without democracy, development is not sustainable, because without democracy, the institutions of accountability, the inclusive institutions that will enable the country to move forward, will not develop.
In his 2 years in office, Magufuli's government has cracked down on media companies. Licenses and registration of some newspapers were suspended, while other papers have been banned. Parliament also passed a controversial law limiting freedom of expression. The law has been used against the co-founder of Jamii Forums, a website that blows the whistle on alleged corruption.
You need the media to fight corruption. Whatever kind of fight he's trying to fight, the anti-corruption kind of drive. It's the same things that we as the media revealed. We are the ones who whistleblow these things, and we are the ones who managed to make sure that these things are getting to the parliament.
For now, there is no significant effort to bulldoze Magufuli out of office, but his election in 2015 may serve as a warning to him and the ruling CCM party. Magufuli received 58% of the vote in that poll, a big drop from previous elections in which CCM candidates won 80% of the vote or more. Mohamed Yusuf for VOA News, Dar es Salaam.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. You're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, the International Conference on AIDS is continuing in the Ivory Coast. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, in health, the International Conference on AIDS and Sexually Transmitted Infections in Africa is ongoing in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, this week. VOA's Lino Madu is covering the week-long high-level gathering on health. She joins us now from Abidjan. Helena.
Thank you, Vincent. A lot is happening here at ICASA 2017, the International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa. One of the highlights is the attendance of some of the key players on the fight against HIV/AIDS. One of them is Senegalese researcher, Professor Souleymane Mboup. He is joining us. He discovered the HIV-2 virus in 1985. Professor Mboup, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell us the main difference between the HIV-2 virus versus the HIV-1 virus.
I would like to just raise some historical issue regarding the discovery of this virus. It was a partnership between the Senegalese university where I was practicing, Cheikh Anta Diop University, 2 universities in France, Tours and Limoges, and Harvard School of Public Health. Discovery came after a survey of female sex workers in Senegal, because I was working before on STIs in this population.
And what were some of the main characteristics of the HIV-2?
Yeah, when we try to identify this virus, what we call at that time confirmatory test, we compare the reactivity in 2 different strains of virus, simian virus and human virus, and what we saw was the reactivity was more closer to the simian virus than the human virus, meaning a human virus but closer to simian. We established a cohort in these female sex workers to study the natural history of this virus first, and also the geographic distribution. For the geographic distribution, we make survey in most of the countries surrounding Senegal in West Africa, and in some countries in Central Africa. And the discovery was, it was a virus localized mainly in West Africa, and even if there was some cases, they was all related in West Africa.
Moving forward in 2017, when you look at the impact of HIV-2 on the global fight against HIV/AIDS, what can you tell us in terms of the challenges in prevention and treatment?
Due to this different research and discovery, we find different properties of this virus, geographical distribution, but also rate of disease development was lower for this virus. For example, after 10 years of follow-up, 90% at that time of the cohort HIV-1 developed AIDS, while only 10% of HIV-2. So the difference in disease progression. There was also a difference in transmission. HIV-1 is more transmissible than HIV-2 sexually, and even from mother to child. For example, the rate at that time without treatment was 30% for HIV-1, while 5%. So difference of properties, meaning that over time we have seen decline of HIV-2 and increase of HIV-1.
So does this mean that treatment is different for each virus?
There are some combinations that work on both viruses, but there are some specific drugs that are not working on HIV-2, meaning that you need to differentiate those 2 viruses before putting people on treatment. But also there have not been real studies to really study the difference between treatment on those different viruses. We know that it works, but we don't have all the details. So, and those kind of studies can only be conducted in West Africa.
So research is obviously something that you focus on. You are the president of IRESSEF, which is the Institute of Health Research, Epidemiological Surveillance and Training. Can you tell us briefly what the Institute does?
The Institute, as you mentioned, is doing health research in general, but also on training and capacity building, and also it's a public health. And the aim is really to allow people to be in an environment where you have multi-skills, but also where people can conduct their research in Africa.
Professor Mboup, thank you so much for joining us here in Abidjan during ICASA.
Thank you for inviting me.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that was Professor Suleiman Mboup. He is a researcher who discovered the HIV-2 virus in 1985. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lino, thank you very much. That's our Africa 54 health correspondent, Lino Moudou, reporting from Abidjan in Ivory Coast at the International Conference on AIDS and Sexually Transmitted Infections in Africa. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, Time Magazine's choice for Person of the Year. Surprising or long overdue. We'll be right back.
There is no Where are these cases majorly happening?
We appreciate it. So thank you.
Engaged in sexual exploitation and abuse.
وأن يقبل الليبيون وأن يقبل القادة الليبيون وأن تقبل التجمعات الليبية
اعتبارا من تاريخ اليوم.
And her foot was part of the cave, and although
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Time magazine has named the social movement aimed at raising awareness about sexual harassment and assault, epitomized by the #MeToo social media hashtag, as the most influential person in 2017. In October, celebrities and women around the world took to Twitter to denounce sexual harassment and assault with the hashtag #MeToo, following the actress Alyssa Milano's call to action. The hashtag went viral, trending on different social media platforms and drawing inputs from actresses, entertainers, and politicians. Well, next up, Lamborghini unveiled its first sport utility vehicle as the Volkswagen-owned luxury sports car brand strives to grab a share of a fast-growing market. Called the Urus, the SUV could help it access new markets and customer groups traditionally not attracted to its high-power, low-slang sports cars. The first Urus SUV will be delivered in the spring of next year, with a retail price tag in Europe of around $200,000, excluding taxes. SUV sales in the upper luxury end of the market have grown nearly five-fold in the 6 years to 2016. Well, and finally, as more people shoot pictures and videos from consumer drones, researchers in Singapore have found a way around the frustrating task of framing and taking photos while manually piloting the craft. Their innovation, called Expose, works in several stages. Now, the user tells the drone to take photographs from different angles of the subject, such as a statue. Next, the shot is composed by moving objects on photos from a sample gallery. Then the drone finds the best position to take the commissioned photo. No manual piloting of the drone is needed, and that's what is trending today. Well, now that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to my